Hey guys, welcome to the Spiritable podcast. My name is Luke.
And my name is Richard. I'm currently getting my master's in theology.
And I have absolutely no marketable skills whatsoever.
And we're going to be talking about spirituality and everyday life struggles from our non-traditional Christian background.
Obviously, we don't have all the answers, so we're going to be dragging on some guests to diversify and talk about their opinions and perspectives.
Yeah, and we think it's weird that people aren't more open talking about spiritual ideas and stuff like this in everyday conversation. So we're talking about it here.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Spiritable podcast. We're rolling deep here with Wes Lockhart again.
Oh, baby, we were rolling.
He's back.
Showing up. So last time we had Wesley here on the podcast, we talked about internet communities and how they affect our spiritual lives and our day-to-day lives. And Wesley himself is an internet boy.
Yeah.
He's self-described internet child.
I mean, I've never said that, so just describe.
An others described internet boy.
Yeah.
Behind my back.
So lent us his expertise in that regard. And today we're just going to catch up and see what he's been up to and maybe dive into some other stuff. Because we didn't get a ton into like your specific beliefs and like more real God talk. So maybe we'll try to probe your mind that way. So again, Wes, what's your spiritual background these days? For anyone who didn't watch the last episode with you.
These days is pretty much like, I guess the best, like, easiest way to describe it is agnostic. I'm not very, like, religious in any particular sense. I'm not incredibly anti-religion these days, but I am also not really, it's not really something that comes into my life so much.
So if someone tossed you a piece of unleavened bread, what do you do with it?
Oh, unleavened bread?
Yeah.
What a name question.
Yeah, I mean, make a sandwich. We could put a hot dog in there.
All right. And a hot dog in there. I like that.
Are hot dog sandwiches, though?
Yes. I'm going to say yes to that.
I don't
No,
think so.
they're not.
I think
They're
any form of meat...
They're tacos. Hot dogs are tacos.
No.
Yes.
No.
Okay, wait. So would you call... If I had some just taco beef and I slapped it between two pieces of Wonder Bread, is that a taco?
No, that's
No.
a sandwich.
Yeah, it's... Okay, are buns and tacos the same thing?
No.
No. Are buns and sandwich bread the same thing? No, but they are more similar than tacos.
No.
I'm right.
No.
Yeah, wait. The hot dog bun consistency is completely different than a taco. The shape is not what matters here.
If
Now, if you have meat-
I push my mashed potatoes into like a little loopy, that's a banana now.
Because soft tacos and hard tacos are shaped differently.
Yeah.
They're both called
There
tacos.
are multiple tiers of taco. Exactly.
Tiers of taco.
The
All
Tetris Whole
right.
music.
Okay, so... No, you please. Please start.
Hot dog is clearly not a taco.
And a story. Okay, we're going to draw our topic from this little beautiful Christmas tin, because 'tis the season. Our
That's
topic,
disturbing.
Wes, you want to pick it and read it out loud?
Okay. I wonder which one I'm gonna pick. Oh boy.
Hey, there are a solid 4.
Wait, there are 4.
No, there's
No,
two.
They're folded in half.
We can get to 2 topics. All right.
No, we go all in on one topic. That's how
So
we
what's
do
the
things.
difference between religion and spirituality?
Ooh, lofty.
I think religion is just defined by any sense of like organization or communal aspects to it. So a religion is something where other people are necessarily participating in it, where spirituality can just be defined by your own beliefs. Like you can say I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not religious. That's the thing you hear a lot, especially nowadays.
For sure.
Spirituality is just a lot less kind of, I mean, neither of them are tangible, but spirituality is just less defined than religion. It doesn't really need to be constrained by any kind of explanation. You can just be spiritual, and that's that. So
I feel like spiritual is just like, yeah, I believe.
exactly.
So maybe more like an agnostic sort of thing.
Yeah, I believe ...
Yeah.
rather than I believe period.
Yeah, and I think religion has more strict tenets to it. Like you are prescribing to one belief
Exactly.
in particular value system.
Although I think we use religion a lot more organizationally than like doctrinally these days. Like there are a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I'm Catholic," and you're like, "Oh, so you believe what the Catholic Church teaches?" And like, "No, I'm like culturally Catholic."
Right.
And you're like,
Yeah.
"What?"
Like a
Okay.
cultural
Because it's
religion,
like,
sort of.
yeah, it's like it's sometimes more an organizational thing than really a doctrinal thing, which is interesting. Very
How it's kind
interesting.
of developed into that, you mean?
Yeah, because it started out as obviously a doctrinal thing. People were like, I believe in this religion and these things. And then it's sort of, you don't need to believe in those things anymore to consider yourself that.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are raised in the traditions of their religious background, but might not necessarily believe in the specific doctrine of their religion. Like, if you're a Christian, you grew up like going to church on Christmas and Easter and celebrating, these Christian sort of holidays, then you might be Christian culturally and like have friends who are all Christian, even though you might not be Christian itself. So are you then part of the religion? I don't really know.
The way you define it yourself can be obviously whatever you want, but I think by most people's definition, if you're not participating in like the regular ceremonies of going to church or whatever is involved in your religion, then you're probably not a part of it, at least to other people, if you're not there participating.
So then, are you more a Christian if you believe the tenets of a branch of Christianity than if you are just culturally Christian?
I mean, I think no, because I think a religion, sure, you can identify culturally as a religion, but in its essence, a religion isn't just a culture. Like, I don't think a religion is going to devolve so much so it doesn't have a belief system attached to it, and it's just culture. It's still going to have a set of doctrine or rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think you're definitely... You can still be culturally something, but if you're not involved with the communal side of it, I mean, beliefs aside, nobody's sitting there... I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure there are a lot of people sitting there rating Christians and who is more Christian than someone else. But
RateMyChristian.com.
I think
That's a good laugh.
you have to... Got him. I think you definitely have to, like I said, take into consideration the whole communal element of it, because whether you believe something is so internalized that nobody sees that, they just see what you do. So if you show up to church every single Sunday, but you cheat on
Slapping
your
a hot
wife
dog
every
bun
Saturday
between.
night, you might not be by definition a good Christian, but nobody else sees that because no one knows. They just see you at church every Sunday.
Right, but then the real thing is that you're not a good Christian.
Right.
Not that you're...
Right.
You know.
I'm just saying, coming back to religion versus spirituality, because it's communal, it's inherently, other people are involved in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, and I'm not saying it's...
You can't have a religion of one. I mean, you can, but nobody considers it a religion other than you, and then what's the point?
But I think my basic point was religion relies more on the beliefs than the community.
Okay.
Like, if it had to boil down in one direction,
Okay.
Yeah.
you couldn't have that without religion.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But I think some of the best parts of religion come from the community. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of spiritual communities, too. And a lot of those, at least my intuition says that spiritual communities seem more accepting and loving than religious communities. Because when you box it in a religion, it's already specifying this one specific creed or something where other people of different sort of dogmas don't want to enter in, depending on whatever the religion is.
Yeah. It's... I was wondering, are there really like communities of people who are just consider themselves spiritual but still gather like as a community in that way?
I got the answer for you right here, baby. Wooks, am I right?
Wooks? What the hell is a wook?
Oh. A wook is like a derogatory term for hippie.
Oh.
Free love, baby.
Yeah, that's definitely an example of a spiritual
That's true.
community, but
Fair enough.
they're all about weird, esoteric, just completely non-founded statements about the galaxy that are probably completely drug-induced. But they definitely have some form of spirituality, even if there's no definition to it whatsoever, and it's mostly just ramblings.
Yeah, it's interesting that religious communities, I mean, clearly have a lot more staying power than spiritual communities. I mean, the hippie movement sort of rose up and then died. How long have there been Catholics? How long have there been Jewish people?
Mm-hmm.
Like, these religions that basically are founded and grow to a certain size and then just remain.
Yeah.
because they have so much of a cultural. I think a lot of it has to do with so much of a cultural identity to it, and so it's not a question for a lot of people. I think it's not a question of like, ooh, do I really believe this? But like, my family is this. All my friends are this. Like this is like one of the markers that identifies me as me.
It's interesting though that you say grow and remain, because the recent trends since like I think somewhere in the 90s have been religion, especially like the Catholic Church is a prime example, has not been expanding at all, has actually been receding.
Yeah,
more and more people. I know so many people, who were raised Catholic, and by now are like, yeah, I mean, I'm not like an atheist, and I believe in spirituality, but I'm definitely not Catholic.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with, I mean, all the scandals around the Catholic Church these days.
I think you see that with religion in general. Like there are some religions, like the Baha'i religion is growing super fast, but like others are just kind of stagnating. And it's interesting to see, is our generation really just that great at that great of a clash with religion?
I know what you're saying. Like every generation goes through this kind of thing.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I think it's partially. I mean, if you want to be super kind of conservative about it, like a lot of hedonistic stuff that we have access to now that we didn't before. I mean, you can watch a movie easily. You don't have to go rent it, and just time for stuff like religion is so minimized because there's so many more entertaining, interesting things to do like that. Like you can just pull out your phone and be easily entertained and easily invested, or even if you want to take entertainment out of it, you just learn so much more. You have access to all of the information in human history in your pocket. So it's really easy to be disenfranchised by something like a spirituality that you grew up with, especially when you're a young adult trying to figure yourself out. You don't want to be restricted by that. So yeah, for a lot of people, I'm sure it is just a phase, and maybe they'll come back to that, or maybe they'll find something else.
I wonder.
I also think a big part of it is that I think religious communities used to be, especially in early and, I mean, until kind of recent America, the main place where you got together as a society,
Absolutely.
as a culture. And we were talking about this a lot last time you were on the podcast about how people are sort of moving from in the flesh societies and communities to internet communities. And I think with that move, people are like, oh, I don't necessarily know if I believe this. And instead of it being like, but that's the only way that I'm going to know my community and maybe meet a person I want to marry or make friends or do anything in the community.
Right.
Like have any sort of connection and not feel like left out.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, well, I can just get this community and I don't need that anymore. And so now it comes down to just like, do the tenets of this religion help me in my life? And I think a lot of people are finding no. And I think getting back to this comparison between religion and spirituality, I think there are benefits to both. I think the benefits to spirituality are when the systems of religion that you found
have failed you,
or you don't think they are providing usefulness to the world, and you think that the way you want to live is going to be more useful to the world. I think people turn to sort of their own spirituality instead of an organized religion. I think the danger there is that it's hard to change, and I think it takes some pretty intense motivation to work on improving yourself. And I think that having a sort of concrete set of rules, assuming that they're useful ones, that says this is what a good person looks like, and of course there's going to be variation in it, but like a good person is someone who loves the neighbor as themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's why just slapping on the 10 Commandments is great.
Yeah.
Because like follow the 10 Commandments, they're good to go pretty much.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of more complicated spiritual ideas, but I feel like that's something that people intuitively follow. Or like to be a good person, you do the 10 Commandments. Like,
well,
right? I feel like that goes over a lot of different religions too.
I mean, the first one's like, love the Lord. And some people are like, God doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, but
they can still be good people.
I think people love the Lord in different ways than just like praising a certain name.
Yeah, so it's like a whole big bag
That's
of
kind of
worms,
yeah. That's a bag of worms.
The Ten Commandments are great and all, but I just really personally have a big problem with not coveting my neighbor's ass. That's just me, though.
How long have you been sitting on that line?
Since I was smiling a second ago.
I saw you chuckling.
Alrighty. I think where the danger comes in with spirituality is, again, this difficulty with change.
The vague nature of it.
Yeah, and so I think if you are not really committed to self-improvement, you can use spirituality as sort of a crutch. Like, I believe that I'm fine being how I am, bad and good. And it's like, well, like, you are great how you are, and what's the greatest thing about you is that you can change and improve, and every day be a better person than you were the day before.
Yeah.
And
How many religions say that point?
So there's an
Catholicism.
interesting.
I mean, some do, but like some are like, say this, you're good to go.
That's what
you
I'm
know?
saying. Like, Catholicism definitely has a thing where it's like you believe in this and you do A, B, and C.
Yeah, Catholicism does have more like action
Right.
with it.
So I think there's an interesting, in a lot of mainline religion, especially Christianity, there's an interesting tension between the actual doctrines of the faith and the way what people believe and the way people behave. And a more clear example is talking to people of Protestant religion that believe in salvation through faith alone. And the actual doctrinal idea is that basically, if you accept Christ as your Lord and Savior, then you're granted salvation. And your behavior, nothing you do can affect your salvation. But most people that you talk to are like, well, how do you accept Christ as your Lord and Savior? By doing what he teaches and being good to people. That's what accept really means. And so people are sort of taking the doctrine, which for a long time was explicitly not that, and sort of being like, well, but here's how you actually be a good person with it.
Right.
So there's this interesting tension developing.
But I think within any religion you have, people are interpreting it in different ways. Like even if in our own religion, people interpret the tenets different ways. Like you're not going to be able to avoid that necessarily. So you can say like, it's not an issue with the people, it's an issue with the dogma specifically. But it's always going to be interpreted differently. And so it might be helpful for people who are coming from a spiritual angle to adhere to some religion because it gives structure. It gives community, it gives guidelines. As long as they're coming from a place of, I want to be a good person and constantly challenge and improve myself, then maybe having religion on top of that is good. But I do see what you're saying, because without that structure, it's easy to just follow the trap of just, I'm going to do what I think is right based off my own thoughts.
Yeah, and that's fine unless by what I think is right is really what I want to do, justified as what I think is right.
Yeah, I'm saying that's where it would lead. Pretty
Yeah.
much. So yeah. Well, so Wes, what kind of structure do you follow to be a better person? Because if you're like agnostic on a good day, like what does that look like for you?
I definitely think you're right about saying like changing anything is hard, and I think, like I said earlier, a lot of people who are in a similar position have definitely come from a religious background. So a lot of times I hear people say stuff like, yeah, well, without any structure, how can you define morality or anything like that? And I think the simple answer is that it already kind of has been through religion and philosophy and anything else I've kind of absorbed growing up. The difference is choosing to not necessarily be involved in them or, follow any kind of say like I was saying earlier, like being actively involved in the community or thinking about it or anything doesn't mean that those impressions that I got from a child aren't still there. Mm-hmm. I think my definition of good was heavily shaped by, religion, and just because I'm not an active participant in it right now doesn't mean I won't be maybe later in life.
Right.
As of my own like moral like hierarchy or hierarchical structure, I think it basically comes down to a lot of empathy, like having as much empathy as you can for other people and just doing the best you can to not step on other people's toes. And if you have inherent empathy, I don't think it's all that hard to kind of figure out what's right and wrong. And whether you want to say, as I've heard you say before, and we've talked about this, that inherent empathy is part of spirituality, which I think is up for debate. I can totally see that.
I think that's at least the common thought attributed
Right.
to spirituality.
Right. And I can see that. I've always kind of been of the opinion that it's more of a thing that we have kind of evolved to have because that's how things work out best. Back in the day, the way we've gotten to where we are is through society and through learning how to get along with each other. And who doesn't get along doesn't really work as well in the society. So we've gotten to this point where we have all of these feelings of guilt when we hurt someone else, and that's just because we're harming progress and we're not doing what we should be doing as an individual to make sure society is still functioning at its peak. But I have a much more like literal, real world.
So is being a good person just to progress society and there's no value?
I'm not saying
Okay.
I'm not saying that's the only reason to do it. I'm saying I think that, at least to me, from where I'm sitting right now, that seems like how we've gotten to where we are with those feelings of empathy. I mean, it's kind of like another example of what I'm talking about, the same phenomenon is like monogamous love. Well, we've evolved to be that way, I think, because that's what works the best.
Works the best in what regard?
Societally, yeah. And I mean, that I don't want to get into that too much because it's a big topic. But I'm just saying, I think a lot of those things that a lot of people ascribe religion to, I see as a more natural phenomenon, maybe. But either way, it doesn't really matter to me so much like where it came from or what's causing it. I don't really care if it's a natural thing or a spiritual thing. It's definitely there. And if you're not doing that, you're a bad person. If you're not trying to not hurt other people and, not help other people out wherever you can, you probably suck. So,
Yeah, if you feel like you don't have to change yourself.
yeah.
But you say that it's not just about that being its origin. You'd say that it has like inherent moral value now.
Mm-hmm.
But if its origin was simply survival of the fittest, cause and effect, then how does it have any more value morally than birds flying south for the winter?
If it's just evolutionary.
Well, I think you can talk about this is a weird subject because I think philosophically talking about morals is different from talking about it spiritually. You know what I mean? But I don't think to you especially it is. I think those are one and the same. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my religious belief, my spiritual belief, very much is a structured, organized
Right.
philosophy as well.
Yeah.
So.
And I think to me they're separate, and you can have a moral structure like that without religion that does have its own value to it, just based on, I mean, it may be so, if you want to put it that way, like so simple as it's just evolution or whatever, that works the best. Helping everyone out works the best. And the value to it beyond that is just, I mean, you can say that's all there is, but I think like if you want to be naturalistic about it, yeah, that's all there is just helping people out and being a good person. I think the higher thing you get from that, maybe if we're not talking about it spiritually, is just knowing that you did your best and I was a good person today. I think it can be that simple. Like I said, my whole belief system is kind of very fluid and I'm just kind of open to whatever, but I definitely think in a much more down to earth kind of natural way like that nowadays.
Interesting.
Does that answer what you're asking?
Sort of. I guess a question I'd have for you is, do you think that there is, do you think there's objective truth? Do you think there's objective right and wrong?
Well, yes and no. When you say objective truth, see, that's hard to say without going down another whole rabbit hole. Because the short answer is yes, and the long answer is not really. Yes, you can say certain things are objectively true. However, everyone is different, and if we really get down the rabbit hole of like how perception works and how our brains tell us what is real in our reality, then no. I mean, you can say something all you want, and if someone really doesn't believe it, it's not going to be objectively true to them. You can never have 100% objective truth out there because someone can perceive something so differently or have something wrong with them or a whole number of things.
Yeah.
But I mean, like a truth outside of personal thought or opinion.
Right. And that's the short answer is like, yes, I think, like we were just saying, there are things that are objectively right, like helping other people. Mm-hmm. The problem is, like I said, that whole rabbit hole of, well, how do you define that and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But shorthanded, yes.
Okay. So what to you makes it true? What makes it right?
Well, I guess kind of like the banal simplicity of it, just that we can say, if we can just slap an umbrella term on there, like I said, helping people or, like doing your best. And if you want to get into the fine-tuned definitions of that, I mean, that it is nice to have the guidelines of religion, but you kind of, without that, kind of make that up for yourself. And everyone defines that individually. And even then, I think a lot of people, because we're still talking about umbrella terms with things like the Ten Commandments, they're definitely guidelines, but I think you could also fudge those lines a bit and make your own set of morals around them and maybe even like push them or abuse them a little to make what you want to be right seem more right to you. You know what I mean?
Right, but then that's still not like objective truth.
Yeah.
That's like your thought.
Right, but people will do that, not even realize they're doing that.
Oh,
and this is
yeah,
what I was saying
for
earlier.
sure,
How
for
do you
sure.
say then that it's objectively wrong to them? Because no matter what, they're going to dig in their heels and say, no, it's not. To them, it's not an objective truth.
Maybe it's like an argument of there is no such thing as human perfection.
Yeah.
We can never be absolutely perfect, but we can agree that perfection is like conceptually out there. There is a conceptual objective truth. We might never reach it perfectly, but there is capital T truth, Just like we can think of perfection, but we're never gonna reach it or see it.
Right.
Or create it.
Yeah.
But it's like what we're working towards or seeing,
Yeah.
envisioning.
So then I guess from you talked about empathy and you talked about societal advancement.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very structured mindset toward things a lot, and I like to look toward sources. So what makes societal advancement the arbiter of truth? Why isn't anarchy the end goal? Why isn't pain the end goal? Why isn't tyranny the end goal? Like what makes helping people better than not helping people?
Well,
Can I make a guess
yeah.
as to what Wes would say? Because I think helping people creates a more functional society on a day-to-day and long-term level. Like, being selfish in the moment is going to help you right now, but if everyone did that all the time, there wouldn't be any functioning society. So after thousands of years of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, maybe people, by choosing to be good to each other, are creating a more lasting society.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Anarchy and all that.
Even.
Anarchy is fun, but it's not good. You can't really get anywhere productive as a species by having everyone just go crazy, might is right sort of mentality. Same thing with tyranny, same thing with just about anything else. And obviously the systems we have right now are so completely flawed and broken, but they're the result of, hundreds of thousands of years by now of human advancement and working towards figuring out a way that works best for everyone. I mean, that's definitely up for debate nowadays, but as it has always been. But that's definitely the end goal, is as much universal happiness as possible, is making the short time you have on this world as worthwhile as possible, getting as much done as you can for everyone else's sake.
Yeah.
And having a good time.
I guess the more and more we talk about this, I realize that I think apart from religion, I'm pretty nihilistic. Like if there is not a source of all that's true and good, and if the natural is all that exists, I very quickly devolve into the fact that nothing matters, which I just didn't really realize about myself before just now.
Kind of
Really?
pessimistic.
I consider myself an optimist.
I know.
But I think I consider myself an optimist because I believe that there is a spiritual reality and a spiritual goal to strive for. And I think like the natural...
Does that place your faith more outside of yourself than you've thought before? Because if the grasp on, being good or having optimism is tenuous in that regard, that seems like it's like not as, you don't value it as much as of in yourself as you
You
might
mean my
otherwise.
faith?
Just like being a good person. If like I'm not saying you believe this, but it sounds like your belief in being a good person now comes down to just an external belief because like
Well-
I have this and I'm a good person because of this, and if there wasn't that, then I'd be a
No,
terrible
I was
person.
putting myself in a mental place where I didn't believe there was an inherent divine authority or truth or source. And I guess maybe that's flawed because I think people that don't believe in God have a highest authority generally.
Yeah.
And I think my mental process was just removing my highest authority. And then, of course, everything's meaningless if there's no authority
Yeah.
giving anything value.
But I think what I was trying to express was maybe the people with the deepest faith would still believe even if they knew there wasn't anything, kind of. The people who adopt those principles so deeply that it makes them the happiest even if they know that it's not real. Or is that too meta
Well,
or something?
my first thought is immediately to disagree with that
Right.
because that's where I was. But that's
Naturally.
like, that's very interesting. I think
All
I
right, so
probably
Richard's going to hell.
I think I probably would eventually come back to an idea of, okay, well, like, I guess I'll just like try to be nice because my life is better if I do.
Yeah, well, and we've talked before about like a lot of our belief comes back to that very basic principle of choosing this on a day-to-day level makes me happy and makes me a better person, and I'm happier because of that. So why would I not do that?
Yeah.
And I think you would agree to that too.
Definitely.
Like everyone feels good when they're a good person. And I
Right.
think that comes back to the whole like spiritual thing as well. Like people who are like generally spiritual versus religious are just like trying to be a good person and realize that they feel warm and loving when they do good things.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a
And
simple
I guess
concept.
you could attribute that to a sort of learned response throughout evolutionary advancement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the cool things that I like from my religious belief is an idea expressed that everything spiritual has a scientific explanation, because if it didn't, it would deprive people of freedom to believe it or not. Like if you were like, oh, this thing exists and it's very clear that God made it,
We went into that.
everyone
a
would,
little bit before.
yeah, we talked about this before, everyone would innately believe in God. And so I think for me, I see science as, and like scientific ideas and evolution and stuff as a means by which God acts. So maybe it did evolve through scientific means to get us to a place that God wanted us to be. God wanted everyone to treat themselves nice, so he developed through evolution in people a sort of innate response. That's sort of the way I'd see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why unicorns aren't real and we get blobfish instead. You know what blobfish is?
Blobfishes are gross.
They're kind
They're
of
like
cute.
cartoons.
They're kind of cute.
I mean, I think that lends itself to more of a hands-on God than I typically think of. Like,
Oh, I think God's very hands-on.
yeah, but I think it's, and you said through people, but I don't think we can necessarily look back and say, okay, well, God did this specifically for this reason. You know,
I don't think we can look back and say it, but
Right.
that doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
I guess I have more of like a maybe a cold deism with still like a loving God. God set it all in motion, knowing exactly how everything would go for eternity, and so was intricately planned, but is not like sort of a but like right now is not tweaking things, you know? Because I feel like that screws with my world if I think of God like screwing with everything.
Definitely
all the time.
agree with that.
I definitely think that God is tweaking stuff all the time in little subtle ways.
I think the tweaking is like an after the fact sort of like God's always here, God's always present. Yeah, but I don't think he's messing with the fabric of our realities all the time.
I think he's creating the fabric of our realities constantly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But
So what do you mean by messing with?
I guess it's like
That's like you paint a picture and then you paint a little bit more on it, and people are like, "Stop messing with that. It's yours."
what I'm
do you
saying
mean?
is like I guess I'm walking.
You go into a museum, that guys, I messed up. Hold on.
Well, no, like it's still a work in
I'll
progress.
kick you out.
I guess it's
I'm not saying like you break into a museum, Rembrandt rises from the grave,
Yeah.
busts down the door.
I didn't finish.
I guess what I was getting out of your statement was to back up, I think there's a sort of a scale between God set everything in motion, nothing's happening like from that. Like God set everything in motion, hands off, versus God's intricately involved in every single thing, every second, millisecond, everything that happens is God. And I do see where you're coming from there. What I was getting from your statement originally was like a middle ground of, yeah, things are happening, and then God jumps in and is like, oh, boop, which I don't agree with, and I don't think that's where you were going, but that's what I heard at first. So I ascribe you're gonna go with that, because I feel like it's either
Well, define your up whoop.
is okay, I've set things in motion. Oh, this isn't going how I want it to. Slap.
Oh, I think from the beginning.
Or I need
of-
this to happen, so plink.
Well, I don't think God's ever surprised, so he's not like, "Oh shoot, that
Right.
didn't go as planned."
Right.
Like,
Lucifer.
didn't mean for that to happen.
Right. I'm with
Fix
you
that
there.
one.
I'm with you there.
No, yeah, I think it's all a big grand design.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting intricacies between how active I think God is and how much people have free will. Because I think both are 100% true. God
That's a
is
hard thing to
all the
balance.
way active, and people have all the free
God
will.
lifts on the reg, dude. God's super active.
Which is a whole big,
Yeah, that's another wormhole there.
but it's very fun.
That's a good one. Maybe that's a topic for a different day.
Yeah, that could be fun. Anyway, our
So-
topic for today was technically spirituality
Yeah, we
versus
deviated. That was
religiousness.
super fun. Hope you guys had fun. So, I guess one more thought I had going back to our main topic of spirituality versus religion is I think the whole spiritual but not religious movement is very like our generation centered right now. Like that at least that phrase. You know, I think people have sort of thought that for a while, but I'm curious about where that's gonna go in people's lifetime. Because like, are people just going to be spiritual forever, or does that like naturally lend itself toward I'm searching. Oh, I've found something. Now I'm religious or philosophical or something.
Well, it goes three ways. It goes, you go back to what you had as a kid, you find something new, like you said, or you just stay not really religious. And I think even then, a lot of people were who were raised in a not really religious household. Like they go to church on Christmas to a random church, but their parents aren't really into it and don't talk about that with their kids at all. A lot of those people, I think, if my understanding of humanity is at all accurate, I think a lot of those people, or even kids of our generation who stay just spiritual but not religious, I think their kids will be more prone towards religion. Because you see so often, especially with political stuff, people just want to be the opposite of whatever their parents are, especially when they're teenagers and young adults. Whatever their parents taught them, they need to, at the very least, experience being on the exact opposite end of that. So many people I know who really, keep using that phrase, really liberal parents are very, very conservative now as young adults because that is like their rebellion. That's their punk, and vice versa. People with really conservative parents who are ultra, ultra liberal. I think the same thing will happen with religion.
Yeah.
So you think like if parents are kind of like spiritually lofty, then kids will find something and adhere to it?
I'm not
Just-
saying all of them are even the majority,
Right,
but I think
but
that's definitely,
a trend.
definitely a trend.
Interesting. I haven't really thought about that.
Yeah, and I think that sort of rebellion can either result in people finding use in and enjoying what they chose through rebellion and sticking with it for a better reason, or being like, oh, I was just being rebellious. I actually do believe. And I think it's an important process of sort of getting rid of our sort of learned childhood beliefs and accepting real adult beliefs. Because I think anyone who believes something just because, my parents taught me it and I've always believed it, don't really have a full belief of it. Until you sort of analyze it and see if it makes sense for you and really think about it. And I think a lot of times that process looks like discarding it and saying what life is like without it. I mean, I had a time.
There's use in that for sure.
Oh,
like
yeah.
being able to look at something outside of being in it and really analyzing it.
Oh, yeah. I had like a 9-month year period where I was in college getting a degree in religion with plans to be a minister where I just didn't believe in God. And I was like, this was my track and I don't know what else to do.
How's this going to work?
But I'm just going to keep doing this, but God's not real. Can't be. That's, people made that up to make them feel better. Haha. Nothing's real. Nothing matters. Just gets back into my nihilistic tendencies, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, this works as a philosophy, though. And it helps me be a better person. It helps me be happy philosophically. And then the more I sort of learned about it and dove into it, the more I was like, wow, this all fits together so well. I don't see how this could have been created by human hands. And that's sort of what led me back to religion. But yeah, so I think there's a great importance to that rebellious period. And I think that ideas accepted purely because of rebellion is not good. So that's a weird little duality there.
Yeah. I don't think many ideas accepted purely by rebellion last. Like, at some point, you have to identify with it so much that you believe it outside of a rebellion.
They can't, because, I mean, that's the nature of rebellion, is
Right.
you're fighting against a big bad monster.
What?
I was really sucked into your conversation. The camera probably stopped recording like 20 minutes ago.
What?
Is it recording again?
Yeah, now it's recording.
Okay, sorry, video problems happened, are bad, but we're back. Video's happening. What were you saying?
I was saying rebellion is an intangible concept because,
like a Star Wars rebellion?
insubstantial. That's,
I haven't trolled it all today.
I know, you've been so good. You've been so good, Luke.
I don't know about
I listened to
you.
like a ton of improv right before this too, so I've been really reining back.
I'm proud of you.
Your references are like.
Leave a
going
comment.
way
Should we
over
do
my
character
head.
work? What do you want to
No, we shouldn't. Clearly not. All right.
So,
You're saying something about the nature of rebellion.
Yeah,
Right.
I was saying it is insubstantial inherently because you are fighting the big bad man, whatever that may be. The only goal of it is screw you to this one thing. And we're not that. That's all we are, is just not that. And I mean, there are definitely like different tiers to it where you can begin to define yourself as some kind of movement. But at the end of the day, if it is true just rebellion for rebellion's sake, like we're talking about, yeah, that's nothing. Once you conquer that thing or the steam runs out, it always goes away. But in this context, like you said,
once counterculture is like accepted, it's not counterculture.
exactly. So, yeah, it's you can get a lot of good out of rebellion, but that is kind of, I guess, not a side product. It's definitely a consequence of it. But
Like a side bay.
yeah,
You said you were being good.
I said I was being good.
We gotta wrap this up.
Boom,
He's losing
boom,
it.
Boom, boom.
I think there are a lot of belief systems that are founded on not being something else.
right.
It frustrates me when I see in my own belief system me being like, ooh, I don't want to be that, so I'll be this instead. I'm like, well, how about I just be what I think is right?
Right.
But I think it's natural
it's so hard
for
to be
us
a human and
to.
not compare.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. Very
and,
true.
And I even think like some of what you were just saying applies to the whole like the spiritual movement is sort of a reaction to religion. And we said that almost at
Yeah.
the beginning of this podcast. I think you were saying that like that people had negative experiences with religion, so they back out and go into a more spiritual sort of side lane.
Absolutely.
So I am going to be curious to see how that sort of spiritual movement ends up, whether like people go on to just continue in that and stick with that, or they find something or they don't find something. I guess I'm curious to see how that's going to go.
And I think with the spiritual movement, it's often they find something substantial in it that, and maybe originally it's just like, I think a lot of it starts out for people, well, for some people as a defense mechanism. Like, religion hurt me in this way, and so I can't be a part of that, and I still need to believe in something. So, here's sort of just a spirituality. People often turn to something that looks totally different, which I think a lot of where sort of the sort of American fad of Eastern religion has come from. They're like, man, I hated growing up Christian because it was horrible to me. People have had that experience.
Right.
And so but I still want to believe in something, but it can't look anything like what hurt me. And so they look toward, Eastern religion looks totally different, so I'll believe in that. And I think a lot of people find a lot of use in that, but I think it starts out as sort of a knee-jerk reaction against what they dislike instead of a real interest in what it is. And I think it can definitely evolve into that. But it's just...
it's a fine enough avenue for getting involved with something. But,
yeah.
So maybe what we'll see is like whatever generation is after Gen Z, just a bunch of hardcore Baptists. Just like really bringing back fire and
a bunch of
brimstone.
Calvinists.
Yeah.
Those Amish, they're coming back. I hear that's the next hot thing next year.
Sometimes I wish I was born Amish. It's just like such a
Actually,
simple life. Dude.
I think I read a study recently that there is a resurgence in Calvinism in the past 10 years.
Really?
Well,
I feel like it's too soon to have like
in that all religion, well, Calvinism hasn't
in the span
been
of things, I guess.
super big for a while. The whole like double predestination and that people have no real free will. I mean, in the sense that all religion is kind of shrinking, but Calvinism all of a sudden started to shrink at a much slower rate than everything else because people are like, for whatever reason, re-interested in that.
Well,
So, yeah.
I think there's always going to be a draw to a belief system that has really clear values and is not wishy-washy about things, whether it's like on whichever side of the scale, like something that is very confident and defined, there's going to be an attraction there.
Yeah, I think there's just naturally attraction to confidence.
Yeah.
And if it's like, here's the answer, people are like, oh, that's easy. This is the answer.
Definitely.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's interesting how much what is just a result of what was and how much it's actually a result of the thing being useful and helpful or harmful.
Right.
Who was, who is, and who is to come. You know?
Okay, we have to end this.
You're really clapping so much, baby boy.
You're clapping more than I snap when I dance at the club. I've just been
You
pointing out
snap
to
a lot when you dance?
I didn't notice, and then someone pointed out to me like, that sucks.
This is just there like,
I gotta stop doing that. Yeah. I was snapping a lot apparently, like on the beat. And people are like,
You snap
why
at
do you
people
do that? No, but I mean, I don't think so. But I didn't even realize I was snapping until they're like, you snap all the time when you dance. I'm like, oh, do I? Ooh, that sucks. That really sucks.
what's your like go-to dance move? If you're just like, you're not dancing with
Wait,
anyone, you're
let's
just
end the
by yourself.
podcast
No,
and
I
then-
think this could be good. This could be good extra. What's
Oh,
your,
I do the
what's
Herman. I
you
do
do
the
the Herman?
PB, that
Your, the
like that.
do you really?
Yeah.
Well, Wes, thank you so much for coming back on and being our first return guest.
You're welcome. I had a great time.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Do you have any like final thoughts that you want to leave anyone with before we peace out?
Final thoughts? Don't pay your taxes. Stop that.
Okay, but real quick,
that was
real
great.
final thought.
Okay.
What would you consider, and this got back into something we were talking about earlier,
Yes.
just in a couple words, what would you consider your highest spiritual or moral authority? Like what is the highest thing that you
Or guided by?
are guided by?
I think, I guess if you wanted to talk broadly, you could go back to what I was saying earlier about society, but I think really it's just doing your best to try to put other people ahead of yourself. So it doesn't have to look like society, because that's a whole big intangible thing to think about. But if you just think about the people around me right now, how can I make their lives better? I guess that's it in so many words. But
I think that's pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love that.
local people right here, right now, at any given moment. Like, what can I do to make their lives
Yeah,
better.
just local. Foreigners?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Feel free to check us out on iTunes. Feel free to check us out on Spotify and YouTube and Google Play. And that's just water. There's just water in there.
That smells really weird.
Anyway, if you
Looks
like
like
what
a
we had to
flower pot.
say, feel free to like it or subscribe. Tell your friends. If you have any comments or questions,
Tell your mom. Tell your dad. Get your uncle involved.
if you have any comments or questions, things you want us to talk about maybe in the future, go ahead and comment.
Yeah.
Send us an email at
Spiritablepodcast@gmail.com or just leave a YouTube comment. Thank you so much. It's been a fun time. I hope you enjoyed our stuff. And Wes, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Wes.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Tell your estranged stepdad that you don't get along with after what he did to your dog.
Thanks
Hey, you know that next door neighbor that used to throw your bike in the street so cars would hit it?
Yo, I
Reach
had
out
a
to
really
him
good
for once.
topic.
Well, Wes, thank you so much for coming back and being our first return guest.
What a guy.
Always fun to talk to you.
And we didn't even talk about
Absolutely.
your little fight mark there on your
Yeah, let's. Whoa.
Hey,
Wee.
face. Hooey! Bing, bing, bam!
Ooh, yeah.
All right, 3, 2.
we're not going to keep that?
So, Wes, it's been super fun hearing your background, hearing your thoughts on things.
No, yeah, you be our outro person. The constitutional
I just thought I'd give it a try.
It's fine, Luke. No, I'm not even mad about it.
That's comedy material. 3, 2, 1.
All right.
Ready?
Oh, we got a yawn. Oh.
Let me just cover my mouth. All right.
It's so many layers of irony that I feel like don't translate.
Dude, it's so deep fried, it's fresh.
Attention, all epic gamers.
We need
John
to end
Wick
this.
is trapped in the contestant zone and needs your credit card numbers, the 3 numbers on the back, and the expiration date. Quickly, time is running out.
Go to your parents' room, grab your dad's wallet. Ben's fixing a light right now.
Please hold. Technical difficulties.
Please hold while I try that extension.